Timeless wisdom. Secrets from the world's greatest thinkers. The light that never fades. There is a kind of wisdom that outlasts empires, transcends the changing tides of fashion and technology, and whispers quietly across centuries into the hearts of those willing to listen. It is not loud, and it does not force itself upon anyone, yet its power is undeniable. This wisdom has been carried by thinkers, dreamers, rebels, and teachers, men and women who stood against the rush of their age to carve out insights that echo like eternal bells. Their words, thoughts, and lives continue to stir something ancient and yet urgent in all of us. They remind us that while the world changes, the core human longing to live meaningfully, to love truthfully, to grow inwardly remains unchanged. In our modern world of digital noise and restless motion, returning to the steady voices of history's greatest thinkers offers not only comfort but clarity. These sages spoke not from fleeting trends, but from lived experience, from solitude, from watching and listening, from suffering and joy, and most importantly, from paying attention to what truly matters. The wisdom they offer is not merely intellectual, it is spiritual, emotional, practical. It is meant to be lived, not just studied. This book is not a history lesson. It is not about memorizing what Plato wrote or reciting lines from Rumi or Gandhi. It is a journey into the living fire of their thoughts, the principles they embodied, and the lessons we can draw to live more conscious, centered, and inspired lives. When we say timeless wisdom, we are pointing to truths that are not trapped in a particular moment in time, but rather shine brighter as centuries pass. These are the truths that withstand the collapse of civilizations and the birth of revolutions, that endure even as languages die out and cities turn to ruins. These are the truths that speak to the human condition. Who am I? Why am I here? What should I do with this one life I've been given? In these chapters, we will travel across time and culture. We will walk beside Socrates as he turns questioning into an art form. We will sit with Confucius as he teaches us the sacredness of human relationships. We will meditate with Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled one of the greatest empires, yet clung fiercely to his humility and moral discipline. We will dance with the fire of Rumi's ecstatic poetry and learn how divine love can burn through the veil of the ego. We will look through the eyes of Leonardo da Vinci and rediscover the magic of curiosity that sees connections others miss. We will feel the quiet force of Gandhi, who transformed the world with simplicity, truth, and relentless non-violence. And we will hear the powerful voice of Maya Angelou, who rose through suffering with her head high, her heart open, and her pen filled with courage. Each of these chapters will not merely recount facts or quotes. Instead, they will unfold as meditations long, reflective, and meant to be absorbed slowly. You may find that some names speak more deeply to you than others. That's the nature of wisdom. It speaks in different voices to different people at different times. But I invite you to sit with each thinker, to let their energy wash over you, and to listen for the unique message they might have for your current chapter of life. If you find yourself lost, unsure of your path, or disconnected from what feels meaningful, this book is a reminder that you are not the first to feel this way, and that many have left luminous footprints to help you find your way back. Wisdom doesn't shout. It waits for silence. It doesn't beg for attention. It invites depth. The world today often rewards speed, noise, and surface appearances, but the thinkers will explore lived by other value stillness, integrity, introspection, beauty, truth, compassion. These are not relics of a bygone age. They are the raw materials of a truly fulfilled life. You don't need to agree with everything these thinkers say. In fact, part of becoming wiser yourself is learning to think critically and compassionately, to hold multiple truths in your hands and decide what resonates for you. But as you read, I urge you to do more than passively consume their words. Reflect on them, apply them, let them change how you see yourself, how you speak to others, how you treat your time, how you face adversity. Let them challenge your habits, shake your assumptions, and inspire you to become more fully alive. There is something humbling and beautiful about remembering that we are all part of a much larger conversation. When we read the words of someone who lived thousands of years ago and feel seen or stirred by them, we are reminded of our shared humanity. We realize that the longing for purpose, for connection, for peace, it's not new, it's ancient, and it links us to every soul who has ever walked this earth with a searching heart. In the pages ahead, let us not rush. Let us breathe slowly. Let us return to the pace of reflection, to the depth of inner silence where wisdom takes root. Let us walk beside these thinkers, not as students looking for grades or facts, but as fellow seekers yearning to live more awake, more loving, more true. For when we learn from those who lived with depth, we remember how to live that way ourselves. Let this book be more than something you finish. Let it be something that finishes something inside of you, the confusion, the doubt, the drifting. Let it start something clearer, steadier, more rooted in the wisdom that never fades. Chapter 1. Socrates and the Power of Asking Questions. There is something undeniably bold about not having all the answers, and yet being entirely at peace with that. In a world addicted to certainty, to clear conclusions and immediate solutions, Socrates stood like a stone in the river unmoving in his conviction that not knowing was the beginning of wisdom, not its opposite. He was not a man who claimed to have found truth. He was a man who had the courage to pursue it endlessly, even if it meant never arriving. His legacy is not a list of doctrines or rigid philosophies, but a method, a mindset, and above all, a way of being with the world. It is a mindset that begins with one revolutionary idea: question everything. It was not cynicism that drove Socrates to question. It was awe. He saw questions not as weapons, but as keys that could unlock illusion, ego, and false belief to reveal a deeper, freer, more grounded way of seeing. His most famous statement, "The unexamined life is not worth living," is not a condemnation, it's a call to wakefulness. Socrates believed that unless we take the time to reflect on our lives, our values, our assumptions, and our choices, we may end up living not as free individuals, but as sleepwalkers trapped in inherited beliefs and societal expectations. And so, his method, the Socratic method, was beautifully simple. Ask, listen, probe, dig deeper. Not to embarrass or defeat someone, but to peel back the surface until only the truth remained. It was a conversation, not a conquest. Imagine the power of that today. In our time, where opinions are broadcast louder than ever, and where people often cling to their views like lifeboats in a storm, Socratic questioning feels radical. It invites us to step away from shouting and toward listening. It teaches us that being right is not as important as being real, and that it is okay, even noblano, to know. The moment we admit ignorance, we open ourselves to discovery, and that is where wisdom begins. Socrates himself claimed to know nothing, and yet, in doing so, he became one of the wisest figures in history. because he knew how to think. He knew how to doubt, how to investigate, how to explore not just the outer world, but his own mind and heart. That is where his genius lies, in the courage to look within, to shine the light inward and ask, why do I believe this? Where does this idea come from? Does it serve me? Is it true? In a way, Socrates was less a philosopher and more a mirror. He reflected others back to themselves. He asked questions that made people uncomfortable, not out of cruelty, but because he wanted them to wake up. And many did, but not everyone appreciated it. Eventually, his commitment to truth, to asking the uncomfortable questions, led to his death sentence. He was accused of corrupting the youth and challenging the gods of Athens, but he never backed down. Offered the chance to escape or change his views, he chose instead to die with his integrity intact. That act of defiance, of remaining loyal to truth above safety, turned him into more than a man. It turned him into a symbol, a reminder that truth is worth everything, and that living authentically is more important than living comfortably. So how can we bring Socratic wisdom into our lives today? It starts with humility. The willingness to say, I don't know, is powerful. It creates space for learning, for connection, for curiosity. Instead of defending ourselves or trying to look smart, we allow ourselves to grow. We become students of life again. Then we ask, not shallow, surface questions, but real, deep, honest ones. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Do I truly believe in this goal I'm chasing, or did someone else give it to me? What values matter most to me, and am I living in alignment with them? Am I being honest with myself in this relationship, in this job, in this season of life? Socratic questions are not meant to be answered quickly. They are meant to simmer, to be returned to again and again. They are living questions, and they evolve as we evolve. By asking them, we do not create anxiety, we create alignment, because we begin to see ourselves clearly, and when we see clearly, we begin to act with purpose. There is another lesson Socrates gives us. Dialogue matters. In a culture driven by monologue social media posts, quick opinions, echo chambers, we forget how to sit with others in real conversation. Socratic dialogue was about sharing perspectives, exploring together, and being open to having our minds changed. Imagine if we could bring that spirit into our interactions today. Imagine listening not to respond, but to understand. Imagine asking someone, why do you feel that way? Instead of trying to convince them of our position. That kind of openness is not weakness, it is strength. Socrates invites us into this deeper form of connection, not only with others, but with ourselves. Ultimately, Socratic wisdom is not about complexity. It's about returning to the basics, asking, reflecting, choosing with awareness. It's about building a life that makes sense to you, from the inside out. Too often we inherit beliefs about success, happiness, relationships, even spirituality, and we live them unconsciously. But the moment we begin to examine them, we reclaim our power. We move from being passengers in life to being pilots. Socrates reminds us that you do not have to know everything. You just have to be willing to seek truth with an open heart. You do not have to have a master plan. You just have to begin with curiosity. You do not need all the answers, but you must ask the right questions. In every chapter of your life, especially the uncertain ones, Socratic wisdom can be a compass. It can guide you through confusion by asking you to go deeper. It can center you when you are overwhelmed by reminding you that clarity comes from within, and it can empower you by showing you that your ability to think, to reflect and to grow is your greatest tool. The unexamined life may not be worth living, but the examined life, that is a life of depth, of beauty, of meaning. So let us begin here with Socrates, the humble questioner, the relentless seeker. Let us honor his courage to doubt, his passion for truth, his refusal to settle for easy answers. Let us take his spirit into our own lives, not to impress others with our intellect, but to awaken our own. Let us carry his torch of inquiry into the dark corners of our assumptions, and light them up with the fire of honest reflection. For it is in asking the right questions that we begin to live the right answers. Chapter 2. Confucius and the Harmony of Relationships. In a world that often glorifies independence and personal achievement, Confucius reminds us that our true strength lies not in isolation, but in connection. His teachings were never meant for the lone seeker retreating from the world. Rather, they were a call to engage deeply, respectfully, and meaningfully with others. To Confucius, the self did not exist apart from society. A person could not become truly virtuous, truly wise, or truly fulfilled in isolation. We become ourselves through relationships, through our roles as children, friends, parents, mentors, neighbors, and citizens. Each relationship is a thread, and together they weave the fabric of a meaningful life. To ignore or mistreat those threads is to weaken the whole. To strengthen them is to strengthen everything. Confucius lived in a time of great political chaos and social unrest in ancient China, and rather than escape it, he sought to bring order by appealing not to force, but to virtue. He believed that the root of a healthy society was not power or wealth, but character. When individuals cultivated virtue, particularly in their treatment of others, they became sources of peace, order, and inspiration. And when those individuals became leaders, families, and communities began to flourish. At the heart of Confucian philosophy is the concept of Ren, often translated as humaneness or benevolence. Ren is not just kindness in a shallow sense. It is a profound respect for the humanity of others. It is compassion in action. It is treating others not just as means to our ends, but as ends in themselves. When you live with Ren, every interaction becomes an opportunity to uplift, to understand, and to connect more deeply. Confucius did not see Ren as something you either had or didn't have. It was a quality to be cultivated daily, in ordinary actions, in small choices. How we speak, how we listen, how we treat those we disagree with, all of it matters. But Confucius also taught that love alone is not enough. Love must be guided by respect. That is why another core concept in his philosophy is lithe rituals, manners, and codes of conduct that bring structure and dignity to our interactions. Li is about behaving in ways that honor others, that preserve harmony, and that elevate relationships. It might seem rigid to modern ears, but it's not about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it wisely. When you follow Li, you learn to pause before reacting. You learn to approach conflict, not with aggression, but with clarity. You learn to disagree without disrespect. And in doing so, you create an environment where trust can grow, even in difficulty. Li is what makes Ren sustainable. Together, they form the heart of Confucian ethics. Perhaps one of the most enduring principles from Confucius is the doctrine of the meanth, idea that virtue lies in balance, in avoiding extremes. This applies especially to our interactions with others. Too much emotion, and we become reactive. Too little, and we become cold. Too much independence, and we drift into isolation. Too much conformity, and we lose our individuality. The wise person, according to Confucius, is one who walks the middle path not by avoiding decisions, but by weighing them carefully, considering both self and others, and choosing what serves harmony. This harmony is not just social, it is deeply personal. When we live in alignment with our values and treat others with respect, we experience inner peace. But when we act selfishly or carelessly, we may succeed externally while feeling empty inside. The harmony Confucius speaks of is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of integrity. Confucius also emphasized the importance of roles and responsibilities. In the West, we are often told to be ourselves. But Confucius would ask, which part of yourself, and in which context? Are you a daughter, a friend, a leader? Each role carries its own duties, and fulfilling them with sincerity is the path to self-knowledge. To be a good parent is not simply to love your children, but to guide them with wisdom. To be a good citizen is not just to follow the law, but to care about the well-being of the whole. To be a good friend is not just to agree, but to challenge and support with honesty. In honoring these roles, we come to understand ourselves not in isolation, but as part of a living web of human connection. The self, in Confucian thought, is not a static thing, but a constant unfolding that happens through our relationships. Who you are is shaped by how you treat others and how others treat you. The more deeply you care, the more clearly you see. Education was central to Confucius's vision, not just academic education, but moral cultivation. He believed that anyone, regardless of background, could become a noble person through learning. But again, this learning was not about memorizing facts. It was about shaping character. It was about reflecting on your actions, studying the great models of the past, and striving to live with dignity in the present. Confucius urged his followers to learn from history, not because the past should be repeated, but because it holds wisdom about human nature. And human nature, in his eyes, was not something to be overcome, but something to be refined. We are born with potential for virtue, but it must be nurtured. That's where self-discipline, respect, and community come in. By surrounding ourselves with people who challenge and uplift us, we grow. By correcting our mistakes with humility, we grow. By staying open to feedback and willing to change, we grow. Growth, to Confucius, was not flashy or sudden. It was a lifelong process, grounded in intention and fueled by care. What does all this mean for us today? It means that relationships are sacred, that our small, daily interactions matter, that how we speak, how we listen, how we treat those closest to us, and even how we treat strangers, all of it, contributes to the kind of world we live in. It means that personal development is not separate from social harmony. If you want to make a difference in the world, start with how you treat the people around you. Speak with kindness. Act with integrity. Fulfill your responsibilities, not because someone is watching, but because you know who you are. When enough people do this, families become stronger, communities become more compassionate, nations become more stable, and the world, slowly but surely, becomes more just. Confucius did not promise perfection. He did not claim that virtue was easy or that conflict would disappear. But he showed that there is a path, a patient, steady path toward a life of deeper meaning, stronger relationships, and true peace, not through power, but through principle, not through dominance, but through mutual respect, not through isolation, but through shared humanity. If Socrates teaches us to question and know ourselves, Confucius teaches us to live with others wisely. He teaches us that how we relate is how we grow, that the smallest gesture, a bow, a kind word, a fulfilled promise can ripple outward with immense power, and that in learning to live harmoniously with others, we become more fully ourselves. So let us listen to Confucius. Let us honor the relationships in our lives, not just the easy ones, but the difficult ones too. Let us bring thoughtfulness into our conversations and discipline into our decisions. Let us take responsibility not only for our own well-being, but for the well-being of those around us. In doing so, we will find that virtue is not abstract. It is not distant. It is here, in this moment, in this choice, in this connection, and in that realization, we begin to embody the timeless wisdom that Confucius so passionately shared. Chapter 3: Marcus Aurelius and the Strength of Inner Stillness. In the chaos of modern life, where urgency shouts from every direction and distractions are never more than a tap away, Marcus Aurelius offers a quiet, resolute voice that says, "Slow down, look inward, and master your mind." He was no philosopher in an ivory tower. Marcus was the emperor of Rome, arguably the most powerful man in the world during his time. Yet what made him truly powerful was not his authority over armies or laws, but his mastery over himself. Through his private reflections, now known as Meditations, Marcus gave us a raw, honest, and profoundly practical guide to resilience, character, and calm. His Stoic philosophy is not about repressing emotion or denying hardship. It is about facing life as it is, not as we wish it to be, and finding strength not in control of circumstances, but in control of our response to them. At the core of Stoic wisdom is a simple, yet liberating idea. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. This is not just a clever saying, it is a call to radical ownership of our thoughts, our behaviors, and our internal life. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea constantly, reminding himself that external events do not disturb it is our judgments about them that do. We get angry not because of what someone says, but because we judge it to be offensive. We become anxious not because of the future itself, but because of our thoughts about it. Once we see this clearly, we are free. Not free from pain or difficulty, but free from the tyranny of reacting blindly. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the strength of inner stillness. It is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is the quiet, unshakable clarity that comes from knowing you can choose your mindset, no matter what. For Marcus, this discipline of the mind was a daily practice. He did not pretend to be perfect. In fact, much of Meditations reads like a man constantly reminding himself to do better, to stay calm, to forgive, to act with justice, to remember what truly matters. This honesty is part of his greatness. He did not teach from a pedestal. He wrote to himself, to his own soul, trying to hold fast to wisdom in a world full of chaos. And this is perhaps what makes his teachings so enduring. They are not abstract theories. They are lived truths. They are the reflections of someone who knew power, knew loss, knew betrayal, knew the weight of duty, and still chose every day to return to virtue. His life was filled with war, personal tragedy, political pressure, and yet he never used those as excuses to become bitter or careless. Instead, he saw them as opportunities to practice what he believed. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not just resilience, it is transformation. It is turning obstacles into fuel. Marcus often spoke of nature not as something out there, but as a deep guiding order within all things. To live according to nature, for the Stoic, meant to live with reason, with purpose, and in alignment with the deeper rhythms of life. It meant accepting change, welcoming death, and understanding that everything has its season. He wrote, "Observe how ephemeral and worthless human things are yesterday, a bit of slime, tomorrow, a corpse." This may sound grim, but it was not meant to depress. It was meant to awaken. Marcus believed that by remembering the shortness of life, we stop wasting time on trivialities. We become more present, more intentional, more courageous. Every breath becomes precious. Every choice meaningful. When we let go of trying to control everything and instead focus on being a good person in this moment, life becomes lighter. We stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. Another core aspect of Marcus's thought is the idea of duty. As emperor, he could have lived in excess, surrounded by flattery and indulgence, but he chose instead to live with simplicity and purpose. He believed that every person has a role to play, and the highest calling is to perform that role with excellence and integrity. He wrote, "Do what nature demands. Get a move on if you have it in you, and don't worry whether anyone will give you credit for it." This is humility in action. He did not need praise. He did not seek recognition. He believed that virtue was its own reward. To live with discipline, with fairness, with wisdom, and with courage, that was enough. That was greatness. In a world obsessed with image, Marcus reminds us to care more about our character than our reputation. The opinions of others are outside our control, but our actions or values, those are ours. The strength of Stoicism lies in its practicality. When anger rises, Marcus advises us to pause, to remember that the person in front of us is also human, also flawed, also temporary. When fear takes over, he tells us to look at the worst-case scenario and realize we can endure far more than we think. When tempted by comfort or laziness, he reminds us that our time is limited, and every wasted moment is a piece of life we never get back. His philosophy is not about grand gestures, but small, consistent choices. To speak the truth, to be kind without being weak, to do the right thing even when it's hard. These are the quiet acts that build an unshakable life. In today's world, where anxiety and distraction seem to be the norm, Marcus's wisdom is more relevant than ever. His call to stillness is not about doing nothing. It is about doing what matters most, with full presence and a calm heart. It is about not letting the noise outside drown out the clarity inside. It is about creating a space within ourselves where we are not constantly reacting, but consciously choosing. In that space, we find freedom. In that space, we find peace. And from that space, we can lead not just others, but ourselves. There is a quiet courage in the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, a courage that does not shout, but endures, a strength that does not dominate, but guides. His life was not easy, and his wisdom was not theoretical. It was tested in fire. Yet, through it all, he remained steady, grounded in the belief that no matter what happens, we always have the power to choose how we live, how we respond, and who we become. This is the essence of inner stillness, not the absence of movement, but the presence of purpose. And in a world that constantly tries to pull us away from ourselves, that stillness is a radical act, a quiet revolution, a timeless strength. Chapter 4. Lao Tzu and the Wisdom of Letting Go. There is a certain stillness in the words of Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher and reputed author of the Tao Te Ching, that transcends time, culture, and language. His wisdom flows not like a lecture but like water, gentle, subtle, yet immensely powerful. While many thinkers through history have tried to shape the world by grasping, by holding, by building structures of control and certainty, Lao Tzu pointed in the opposite direction. He taught that the greatest strength lies in surrender, that true wisdom grows not from accumulation but from release. His was a philosophy not of doing more, but of doing less, of stepping aside, yielding, trusting. In a world obsessed with control and permanence, Lao Tzu invites us to loosen our grip, to soften our gaze, and to walk the path of least resistance. This is not a call to passivity. It is a profound call to harmony. Harmony with nature, with life, and with ourselves. At the heart of Lao Tzu's philosophy is the Tao Way. The Tao is not a doctrine or a deity. It is the nameless, formless flow of life itself. It is the source of all things, the natural order, the silent rhythm that moves the stars and causes flowers to bloom. It cannot be seen, heard, or touched, and yet it is everywhere, always. To live in accordance with the Tao is to stop fighting against life and start moving with it. It is to recognize that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Lao Tzu writes, "Those who flow as life flows know they need no other force." This is the essence of his wisdom, not striving, not forcing, but flowing. He saw that the more we try to control, the more we suffer. The more we let go, the more life opens up. In the West, letting go is often misunderstood as weakness or failure. But for Lao Tzu, letting go is strength. It is courage. It is trust. This wisdom is especially radical in our modern context. We are taught to hustle, to plan, to compete. Success is measured by how much we can accumulate, achieve, or dominate. We are praised for being decisive, assertive, and in control. But under this surface is often a deeper anxiety, a fear of losing control, of uncertainty, of falling behind. Lao Tzu saw through this illusion. He reminded us that control is not only impossible, but also unnecessary. The river does not need to push to reach the sea. It simply flows. The tree does not need to force its growth. It simply receives. So too, we can live with grace if we stop trying to bend life to our will, and instead learn to trust its unfolding. He writes, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Imagine the peace of living this way, not rushing, not clinging, simply allowing." Letting go does not mean giving up. It means giving into the deeper intelligence of life. It means recognizing that we are not separate from nature, but part of it. We are not here to conquer the world, but to live in harmony with it. Lao Tzu encouraged us to cultivate wu-effortless action. This is not inaction or laziness. It is the kind of action that arises naturally, without strain, from deep alignment. Think of a musician lost in the music, or an athlete in flow. There is no forcing, just presence. This is the state Lao Tzu invites us to live from every day. When we act from Wu Wei, we stop trying to dominate situations and people, and instead respond with awareness and balance. We let go of ego, of agenda, and let the Tao move through us. The result is not chaos, but deep, quiet harmony. Lao Tzu also spoke of humility as a great power. In a world driven by pride and self-assertion, he taught the value of being low, of being empty. The soft overcomes the hard, he wrote. The humble is the foundation of the noble. Water, though soft and yielding, carves through rock. It bends but never breaks. It goes where it is needed and nourishes all. In the same way, he encouraged us to be like water, to be gentle, adaptable, and kind. When we release our attachment to being right, to being strong, to being in charge, we open ourselves to deeper wisdom. We become available to life's guidance. We begin to notice what really matters. The ego says, I must win. The Tao says, flow with what is. One of the most powerful lessons Lao Tzu offers is the idea of returning. He writes, returning is the movement of the Tao. Just as the tide returns to the shore, just as the seasons return in their cycle, so too must we return to simplicity, to presence, to ourselves. Modern life often pulls us away from our bodies, our hearts, our peace. We are constantly looking outward at news, at noise, at validation, but the Tao is found within. It is not something to achieve, but something to remember. It is always here, waiting in the silence. When we let go of distractions and return to stillness, we rediscover our connection to all things. We remember that we are already whole, that life, even in its confusion, has its own deep wisdom, and that letting go is not a loss, but a return to truth. Lao Tzu's wisdom is deeply healing because it meets us where we are, not where we think we should be. He does not ask us to strive for perfection or become someone else. He asks us to let go of what we are not, so we can return to what we are. When we drop the masks, the roles, the expectations, what remains is peace. He reminds us that life is not meant to be controlled or conquered, but appreciated. Be content with what you have, he wrote. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. This is not denial. It is clarity. A clarity that comes not from adding more, but from letting go of the need for more. In that simplicity, we find abundance. The challenge, of course, is that letting go feels uncomfortable. It feels like uncertainty, like emptiness. But that emptiness is where possibility lives. Just as a bowl is useful because it is empty, our lives become full when we stop trying to fill them with noise. Stillness is not the absence of life, but the space in which life can truly be felt. Lao Tzu teaches us to trust that space, to trust that even when we do not know, we are being guided, that even when things fall apart, they are falling into place, that in surrender there is power. The kind of power that doesn't push or force, but transforms from within. In a world that is always shouting, Lao Tzu whispers. In a world that is always striving, he stands still. In a world that is always grasping, he lets go. And in doing so, he shows us a different way, a softer way, a truer way, one that leads not to the heights of ambition, but to the depths of being, one that does not promise control, but offers peace. His wisdom, though ancient, feels like a balm for our modern wounds. It reminds us that life is not something to conquer, but to embrace. That peace is not found in the future, but in presence. That happiness is not in getting what we want, but in wanting what we have. And that the greatest strength we can develop is not the ability to hold on, but the grace to let go. Chapter 5. Confucius and the Path of Moral Integrity. In the landscape of ancient wisdom, Confucius stands not as a mystic or a revolutionary, but as a teacher man rooted in the everyday realities of human interaction, in the rhythms of family, society, and governance. His legacy endures not through cryptic verses or abstract thought, but through practical insights into what it means to be a good person, to live with integrity, and to build a world grounded in respect and responsibility. In times of disorder and moral confusion, Confucius looked not to change the world by force, but to guide it back to harmony through the cultivation of character. He believed that a better world began not with grand systems, but with the individual by learning to master oneself, to treat others with dignity, and to walk with quiet honor. This was the heart of his philosophy, the belief that virtue is the cornerstone of everything. Without virtue, no law, no government, no wealth can stand. With it, even the most broken of societies can heal. Confucius emphasized 5 constant virtues: humaneness, yi, righteousness, li, proper conduct, ji, wisdom, and xin, faithfulness. These were not lofty ideals reserved for the elite, but living principles meant to guide every moment of daily life. Ren, often considered the highest virtue, is the quality of compassion, empathy, and loving kindness. It is the deep recognition that our humanity is bound together, that to hurt another is to hurt ourselves, and to lift another is to lift ourselves. In Ren, we find the courage to forgive, the patience to listen, and the generosity to give without seeking anything in return. Yi is the moral compass that points toward justice and fairness. It demands that we not only do what is legal, but what is right. Li is the structure that holds society together, the rituals, manners, and customs that express respect and order. It teaches us that discipline is not repression, but a form of care for the world around us. Ji, or wisdom, helps us discern truth from illusion, and Jin, or faithfulness, reminds us that our word is our bond, and that trust once broken is hard to restore. These values, when practiced consistently, form the fabric of moral integrity, not as rules imposed from the outside, but as a way of being that arises from within. What makes Confucius's teaching powerful is its emphasis on personal responsibility. He did not ask people to wait for a savior or blame the times they lived in. He asked each person to become the example. The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions, he said. In a world that often rewards noise and performance, Confucius taught that true greatness lies in quiet consistency, in doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. He believed that if rulers were upright, the people would follow, and if parents were kind and principled, children would learn to be the same. He saw society as a reflection of its individuals. To fix a nation, one must start with the family. To fix a family, one must start with the self. This chain of responsibility means that our choices matter, not just to us, but to the world we live in. Another profound insight from Confucius is the idea that learning never ends. He saw education not as a way to accumulate facts, but as a lifelong journey of self-cultivation. To learn, in his eyes, was to grow morally, to refine the soul, to deepen one's understanding of justice, humility, and compassion. He said, "Is it not a joy to learn and, as time passes, to apply what you have learned?" The goal was not perfection, but progress. Even the wise had room to grow. This humility is essential in our time, when certainty often masquerades as strength. Confucius teaches us that the wise are always learning, always listening, always seeking to understand before being understood. In this way, knowledge becomes not a weapon, but a light. In personal relationships, Confucius placed immense value on respect and reciprocity. His version of the Golden Rule was simple: do not do to others what you would not want done to you. He believed that every person, no matter their status, deserved to be treated with dignity. Filial piety, respect for one's parents and ancestors, was central to his thought, not as blind obedience, but as a way of honoring the roots from which we come. In honoring our parents, we honor life itself. This sense of continuity, of intergenerational respect, fosters a deep sense of belonging and responsibility. In a world where individualism often isolates us, Confucius reminds us of our place in a larger story, that we are links in a chain, connected to those who came before and responsible for those who come after. The virtue of liturgical propriety is often misunderstood in the modern world. It is not about rigid formalism or empty gestures, but about the deep structure of respect. Lee teaches us to be mindful of how we show up in the world, how we speak, how we greet others, how we conduct ourselves in both public and private life. It's in the way we bow our heads in gratitude, the way we address elders, the way we honor promises. These rituals, large and small, create a culture of respect, reminding us that every interaction is an opportunity to reflect our values. Confucius believed that by practicing Li, we create harmony, not just within ourselves, but in our families, communities, and nations. What is perhaps most relevant about Confucius's teachings today is his vision of leadership. In a time when leadership is often equated with power or popularity, Confucius offers a different model. The true leader, he says, leads by moral example. They do not need to command respect, they earn it through character. They do not manipulate but guide. They do not dominate but uplift. He who rules by virtue is like the North Star, Confucius said. It remains in its place, and all the other stars revolve around it. This metaphor speaks to the quiet magnetism of integrity. A person of virtue naturally attracts others, inspires loyalty, and cultivates harmony. In this sense, leadership is not a position, but a way of being. We all lead in some way, every day, whether in our homes, our work, or our communities. The question is not whether we lead, but how. One of the deepest lessons from Confucius is the importance of introspection. He advised his students to examine themselves daily. Have I been faithful in my dealings with others? Have I been sincere in my words? Have I practiced what I taught? These questions are not meant to induce guilt, but to inspire integrity. They remind us that the path of virtue is not a one-time decision, but a continuous practice. It requires vigilance, honesty, and humility. But in this practice, we become stronger, clearer, more whole. We begin to walk with a quiet confidence in no because we are perfect, but because we are aligned with our values. In a chaotic and divided world, Confucius offers a path back to clarity. He reminds us that change begins with the self, that kindness is a form of strength, that respect is the foundation of peace. That integrity is not old-fashioned, but timeless. He asks us to live not for applause, but for principle, to rise above self-interest and serve the greater good, to speak less and mean more, to walk the talk. His teachings do not promise fame or fortune, but they do promise something far greater: a life of meaning, a legacy of honor, and a heart at peace. Confucius did not claim to be a sage. He called himself a transmitter, a steward of wisdom passed down through generations. In this humility, we see his greatness. He invites us to do the same, not to invent new truths, but to live the truths that endure, to listen deeply, to act justly, to honor our roles in the sacred web of life. When we do this, we become more than just individuals. We become guardians of harmony, builders of trust, and bearers of light. And that, as Confucius knew, is the foundation of a better world. Chapter 6. Marcus Aurelius and the Strength of Inner Fortitude. Among the ruins of ancient Rome, where emperors once walked marble halls and dictated the fate of millions, the figure of Marcus Aurelius stands apart not for his military conquests or lavish displays of power, but for his unwavering inner strength, his commitment to philosophy, and the quiet wisdom found in the pages of a private journal he never intended for the world to read. As a ruler of one of the most powerful empires in human history, Marcus was surrounded by turmoil, plagues, wars, betrayals, and loss. Yet in the middle of such chaos, he turned not outward, but inward, penning words that would become one of the most enduring testaments to human resilience, the Meditations. In these deeply personal reflections, we meet not a distant emperor, but a man flawed, tired, burdened, and yet determined to live with integrity. His writings echo with a timeless truth, that the true battlefield is not the world, but the mind, not the empire, but the self. And in mastering this inner world, we find the strength to navigate whatever storms life brings. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic, a philosophy that teaches the cultivation of virtue, the acceptance of fate, and the importance of reason over emotion. Stoicism is not about cold detachment, but about choosing clarity over confusion, stability over reactivity. It does not demand the elimination of feeling, but the mastery of response. At its heart is the belief that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. This idea, so simple, yet so profound, can be the difference between peace and torment, between rising and falling. For Marcus, philosophy was not an intellectual exercise, but a survival tool. In the face of suffering, disappointment, and decay, it was his anchor. He reminded himself daily of the impermanence of all things, not to despair, but to cherish the present, to let go of pride, and to focus on what truly matters. One of his most enduring insights is that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These words invite us to reclaim our power. How often do we surrender our peace to things beyond our control, the opinions of others, the traffic, the news, the past? Marcus challenges us to turn inward, to anchor ourselves in reason, discipline, and perspective. When the world is chaotic, your mind can remain calm. When others are cruel, you can choose compassion. When disappointment arises, you can respond with grace. This is the strength of inner fortitude, not the absence of struggle, but the ability to endure it with dignity. To be strong is not to be unfeeling, but to feel deeply and still stay grounded. It is to experience fear, pain, or sorrow, and yet not be defined or broken by them. Another powerful lesson Marcus offers is the embrace of impermanence. Everything is ephemeral, he writes, both what remembers and what is remembered. To some, this may sound bleak, but to Marcus, it is freeing. When we realize that all things pass, joy, pain, success, failure, we learn to let go. We stop clinging. We stop resisting. We begin to flow. This doesn't mean apathy. It means presence. It means appreciating what we have while we have it. It means loving fully, acting honorably, and living meaningfully without the illusion that any of it is forever. By accepting the transient nature of life, we learn to prioritize what truly matters. kindness, wisdom, courage, and service. These are the virtues that do not fade with time. They are the soul's legacy. Marcus also teaches us the importance of duty. As emperor, he did not seek pleasure or fame. He saw his position not as a privilege, but as a burden to be carried with humility. His daily concern was not for himself, but for the welfare of his people. In this he exemplifies the Stoic ideal, to live not for self-indulgence, but for service. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, he writes. Be one. This call to action echoes through the centuries. It reminds us that the highest form of philosophy is not words, but deeds. It is easy to speak of values, harder to embody them. Marcus challenges us to stop waiting for better circumstances or perfect understanding, and to start living our principles know in the marketplace, in the home, in moments both small and grand. A central practice of Marcus's philosophy was reflection. Every day he turned inward and asked himself the hard questions: have I acted with justice? Have I let anger control me? Have I been true to myself? This habit of self-examination is a powerful tool for growth. It forces us to face our contradictions, to course correct, and to live more consciously. In a world of distraction and noise, this quiet, daily return to the self is an act of courage. It is a reminder that greatness is not measured by status, but by alignment, by the degree to which our actions reflect our values. And when we fall short, as we all do, Marcus teaches us not to despair, but to begin again. The impediment to action advances action, he says. What stands in the way becomes the way. In every challenge lies an opportunity not just for achievement, but for transformation. In personal relationships, Marcus Aurelius urged patience, understanding, and forgiveness. He recognized that people act from their own pain and ignorance, and that reacting with anger only spreads more suffering. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He writes not in bitterness, but in preparation. This mental rehearsal was not pessimism, it was realism. By expecting human flaws, he could meet them with compassion rather than outrage. He understood that peace comes not from others changing, but from our ability to remain centered regardless of their behavior. This is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. To remain kind in the face of cruelty, calm in the face of chaos, and just in the face of injustice is to walk the path of true fortitude. Marcus Aurelius also wrestled with the fear of death, as all humans do, but he came to see it not as something to fear, but as a natural part of life. Death smiles at us all, he said. All we can do is smile back. This is not nihilism, but a call to courage. By facing death, we learn how to live. We stop postponing joy. We stop fearing change. We begin to act with urgency, to love more openly, to forgive more easily. In the face of our mortality, every moment becomes precious. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every choice of integrity becomes part of the legacy we leave behind. Marcus did not try to escape death, but to live in such a way that when it came, he could meet it with peace. In this, he invites us to the same a life lived so fully, so truthfully, that nothing is left unsaid or undone. Ultimately, the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius is not about escaping life's difficulties, but about standing tall in the middle of them. It is about becoming the kind of person who can hold steady in the storm, not because the storm is easy, but because your roots run deep. His teachings remind us that fortitude is not found in force, but in presence, not in dominance, but in discipline. It is the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are, what you value, and what you stand for. It is the discipline to rise each day and do the next right thing, not for applause, but for the simple dignity of it. It is the grace to fail and try again, the humility to learn from all things, and the courage to meet life, not on our terms, but on its own. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he sought only to rule himself. His greatest conquest was not of nations, but of his own impulses. His writings are not commands, but reminders, gentle, firm, and enduring, that the strength we seek is already within us. In reading his words, we are called to remember our own resilience, to hold fast to our values, to live each day as if it were our last, not in fear, but in full presence. And in doing so, we too walk the path of the Stoic king, not as emperors, but as human beings committed to the art of living well. Chapter 7. Rumi and the Wisdom of the Heart. In the quiet moments of our lives, when the noise recedes, the plans unravel, and the stillness wraps around us, we may begin to sense something deeper stirring within. It is not the voice of logic, nor the echo of habit, but a softer rhythm, a whisper, a longing. This is the realm of the heart, the space where reason yields to wonder, where mystery takes the lead, and where love, not fear, becomes the compass. Few figures in human history have articulated the language of the heart with as much grace, depth, and radiance as Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet, mystic, and philosopher whose words transcend culture, creed, and time. Though born into a world torn by invasion and displacement, Rumi discovered a world within himself, a boundless universe accessed not through conquest, but through surrender, not through calculation, but through connection. In his verses, we find not answers, but invitations to feel more deeply, to break open, and to remember the divine presence that lives in every breath. Rumi's wisdom is rooted in love, not the romanticized, conditional love of stories, but a love that is fierce, inclusive, and all-consuming. For him, love is not something you find, but something you are. It is the fire that burns away the ego, the force that unites all things, the thread that stitches together heaven and earth. He writes, "The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. This profound insight points to an inner knowing that love is not external or earned, but innate. To listen to the wisdom of the heart is to awaken to this truth, to peel away the layers of fear, shame, and separation, and rediscover the core of compassion and wholeness that has been there all along." Rumi's spiritual awakening was ignited by his meeting with Shams of Tabriz, a wandering dervish whose presence shattered Rumi's intellectual rigidity and awakened his soul. Their connection was not merely emotional or philosophical, it was alchemical. In the presence of Shams, Rumi began to dissolve, to lose his outer self in order to find his inner being. The poetry that flowed from this transformation was not written for acclaim, but as a cry of devotion, a hymn of union, a roadmap for anyone longing to return home to themselves. Rumi's experience teaches us that true awakening often comes through love that unsettles, that challenges us to see beyond form and function, to feel the divine pulse in another, and by doing so, to recognize it in ourselves. His journey with Shams is a reminder that the people who disturb our comfort are often the very ones who crack open our hearts, allowing a deeper light to shine through. The central theme of Rumi's work is the return to oneness, the idea that we are never truly separate, that the divisions we perceive are illusions born of ego and fear. You were born with wings, he writes. Why prefer to crawl through life? This poignant line captures his deep urging for us to remember who we truly are, not small, broken, or unworthy, but vast, luminous, and deeply connected to the divine source. To follow Rumi's path is to stop seeking fulfillment outside and to begin listening to the quiet guidance within. It is to realize that our longing is not a flaw, but a sacred compass pointing us back to unity. And yet, this return is not achieved through force, but through surrender, not through achievement, but through acceptance. Rumi teaches that the path of the heart is not a ladder to climb, but a door to open, a door that has never been locked, only forgotten. Pain plays a significant role in Rumi's teachings, not as a punishment, but as a purifier. He does not offer comfort by denying suffering. Instead, he invites us to embrace it as a teacher. The wound is the place where the light enters you, he writes. This insight may be hard to accept, especially when we are hurting. But Rumi speaks from a deep awareness that life's trials often strip us of what is false, forcing us to confront what is real. Grief, heartbreak, failure, these are not the ends of our story, but the chisels that sculpt our soul. When we resist pain, we stay stuck. When we let it move through us, we are transformed. The wisdom of the heart does not avoid sorrow. It holds it tenderly, allowing it to cleanse and clarify. In this way, even our darkest moments become part of our becoming, not detours, but doorways. Rumi's approach to life is not about escaping the world, but dancing with it. He often uses metaphors of music and movement to express the soul's longing for reunion with the divine. Whosoever knows the power of the dance, he says, dwells in God. The whirling dervishes of the Mevlevi tradition, inspired by Rumi's teachings, spin in meditation not to become dizzy, but to align with the cosmic rhythm. Their movement is a prayer, a surrender, a letting go of the self in order to merge with the greater whole. This dance is not limited to ritual. It is a metaphor for how we live. Are we rigid or responsive? Are we holding on or flowing with life's rhythm? To live like Rumi is to engage with the world not from fear or control, but from presence and grace. It is to trust the current even when we do not understand where it leads, knowing that the heart, when free, always finds its way. One of the most beautiful aspects of Rumi's philosophy is his inclusiveness. He transcends religious and cultural boundaries, seeing the divine in all forms and faiths. I belong to no religion, he says. My religion is love. Every heart is my temple. This universalism is not a rejection of spiritual tradition, but a deep honoring of the essence that underlies them all. Rumi reminds us that beneath the surface of doctrines and dogmas lies a common longing to know, to connect, to return. His wisdom encourages us to look beyond labels and to meet one another heart to heart. In a world often divided by belief and identity, Rumi's voice is a healing balm, calling us to remember our shared humanity and the divine thread that binds us together. His words urge us to listen, not just with our ears, but with our heartstow, the silent music playing in every soul. Silence is another theme that pulses through Rumi's work. Though he was a poet of breathtaking expression, he understood that some truths go beyond words. There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. In our noisy, distracted world, silence can feel foreign, even uncomfortable. But Rumi teaches that in silence, we hear the deepest truths. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence, the sacred pause where the ego falls away and the soul speaks. In this space, we discover that wisdom is not something we acquire, but something we uncover. It is already within us, waiting to be remembered. The heart, when quieted, becomes a mirror reflecting truth. And in this reflection, we are not separate or lost, but whole. To live by Rumi's wisdom is to live from the inside out. It is to value intuition as much as intellect, to trust the unfolding of life, and to recognize that the path is not linear, but spiral. We return again and again to the same lessons, each time with greater depth and compassion. We fall, we rise, we forget, we remember. And through it all, the heart leads not as a reckless impulse, but as a sacred guide. Rumi's teachings invite us to soften our defenses, to stay open, and to love without holding back. He does not promise that this path is easy, only that it is worth it. The journey of the heart is not about perfection, but about presence, not about avoiding pain, but about embracing all of life as a sacred dance. In every line of Rumi's poetry, we are reminded that we are not alone, not broken, not lost. We are already connected to the source we seek, already carrying within us the wisdom we crave. The task is not to acquire more, but to awaken, to shed the layers of fear, doubt, and separation, and to return to the simplicity of love. This love is not naive or sentimental. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It is what births, stars, heals, wounds, dissolves barriers, and transforms lives. To live from this place is to live a meaningful life not measured by achievement, but by presence, not by possessions, but by peace. Rumi's voice reaches across centuries to remind us that the heart is not weak or foolish, but wise beyond measure. It knows the way home. And when we listen, really listen, we discover that the divine has been whispering all along, not from above, but from within. In his words, in his silence, in his dance, Rumi invites us to return to our Salvesto, the sacred, wild, open-hearted beings we have always been. And in doing so, we do not escape the world. We learn how to love it more deeply, more courageously, and more completely than ever before. Chapter 8. Mahatma Gandhi and the Strength of Peace. In a world that often equates power with dominance, success with aggression, and progress with relentless speed, Mahatma Gandhi offered an alternative pathos grounded not in force, but in stillness. Not in violence, but in peace. Not in conquest, but in truth. To many, peace may appear passive, even weak, in the face of oppression and chaos. Yet Gandhi showed that peace, when rooted in conviction and courage, is one of the greatest strengths a human being can wield. His life, a testament to the fusion of thought and action, invites us to reimagine what it means to be powerful. With no army, no wealth, and no title of royalty, this small man in a homespun cloth led a movement that shook an empire and inspired generations. How? Not through hatred, but through love. Not through retribution, but through resilience. Not through war, but through an unshakable commitment to ahimsa and nonviolence. Gandhi's belief in nonviolence was not a political strategy, was a way of life. It was deeply spiritual, deeply moral, and above all, deeply human. It stemmed from his understanding that all life is sacred, and that to harm another is to harm oneself. He often said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind," a sentence that captures the futility of revenge and the wisdom of restraint. But this form of nonviolence was not inaction, was active resistance, a form of strength that demands more courage than any weapon could ever provide. To meet hatred with compassion, to answer brutality with calm, to march forward when beaten down, that requires a strength that transcends physical might. Gandhi's courage lay not in inflicting pain, but in enduring it, not in silencing the enemy, but in awakening their conscience. And in this, we find a model for our own lives, not just in grand political struggles, but in the daily challenges that test our integrity. Peace, in Gandhi's philosophy, begins with the self. He understood that external conflicts are often reflections of the unrest within. To bring peace into the world, one must first cultivate it in the heart. "Be the change you wish to see in the world," he famously said, a call to action that is as simple as it is profound. It means that if we seek honesty, we must be honest. If we desire justice, we must act justly. If we long for peace, we must embody it in every word, every thought, and every action. This is not easy. It requires immense discipline and self-awareness. It asks us to observe our impulses, our judgments, and our fears, and to choose again and again a higher response. Gandhi believed that self-mastery was the foundation of all meaningful change. Without it, our efforts collapse into hypocrisy. With it, they carry the force of authenticity that touches hearts and transforms lives. One of the most remarkable aspects of Gandhi's legacy is how he combined inner transformation with social action. He did not retreat from the world in search of enlightenment, brought his spiritual ideals into the messiness of politics, into the heat of injustice. He proved that love is not just for poetry and prayer rooms, but for courtrooms, picket lines, and parliament halls. His campaign for India's independence was not just a fight for political freedom, it was a movement to reclaim human dignity. He marched not just against colonizers, but against inequality, exploitation, and indifference. And he did it all without raising a fist, teaching us that peaceful resistance is not only morally superior, it is more powerful in the long run, because violence may conquer, but it cannot convert. It may subdue, but it cannot inspire. Only love, only truth, only peace can touch the soul, and Gandhi understood this with every fiber of his being. Gandhi's life was not without failure. He faced criticism, disappointment, and deep personal pain. He saw the country he fought for descend into partition and violence. He struggled with internal conflicts and questioned his own decisions, and yet he never wavered in his commitment to peace. This, too, is part of his greatness. Not that he was flawless, but that he kept returning to his principles, even when the world turned dark. He showed that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the courage to keep walking through it. That peace is not the absence of struggle, but the capacity to struggle without losing your soul. His perseverance, born of purpose, is a lesson to all of us. When we anchor ourselves in values larger than our fears, we become unshakable. To walk in Gandhi's footsteps is to make a radical choice, to value truth over convenience, love over anger, humility over ego. It is to look at our lives and ask, where am I reacting instead of responding? Where am I feeding division instead of building bridges? Where am I seeking control instead of practicing compassion? These questions are not easy, but they are essential. Gandhi believed that every individual holds the power to make a difference. You do not need to lead a nation to lead a revolution. You only need to lead yourself. In your home, in your work, in your relationships, your words and actions either contribute to peace or to pain. The strength of peace lies in this awareness and recognizing that you are not powerless, that every moment is an opportunity to choose differently, to choose better, to choose from love. Gandhi's message is especially vital in today's world, where division and aggression often dominate public discourse. We are surrounded by noise, outrage, and polarization. But his teachings offer a path forward not through louder voices, but through deeper listening, not through more weapons, but through more understanding, not through control, but through connection. The path of peace requires patience, forgiveness, and above all, faith in oneself, in humanity, in the possibility of change. It calls on us to look at our adversaries not as enemies, but as fellow travelers. To recognize the hurt behind the hate, the fear behind the fury, and to respond not with contempt, but with curiosity. This is not weakness, it is revolutionary strength. It breaks cycles, builds trust, and heals wounds that violence can never touch. At the heart of Gandhi's legacy is Satyagraha, force of truth. It is the belief that truth is not a weapon to wield, but a presence to embody. It is not something to impose on others, but something to live so fully that it becomes undeniable. Gandhi knew that truth and peace go hand in hand, that one cannot exist without the other. When we lie to ourselves, when we betray our values, we lose our peace. But when we speak and live our truth, even in the face of resistance, we become a light in the darkness. We begin to change the world not by force, but by example. His assassination did not silence his message. It amplified it. The bullet that ended his life could not kill his legacy. For Gandhi lives on wherever courage meets compassion, wherever silence meets justice, wherever someone chooses love over hate. His story reminds us that peace is not a utopian dream, it is a daily practice. It is how we speak to a stranger, how we resolve conflict, how we stand up for what is right. It is found not only in the halls of power, but in the quiet strength of everyday people who choose kindness in a world that often forgets it. Mahatma Gandhi was not a prophet, nor a saint. He was a man flawed, searching, evolving, and that is what makes his wisdom so accessible. If he could become a force of peace, so can we. If he could stand in front of injustice without hatred, so can we. If he could live by love in the face of fear, so can we. His life is not just a story from history, it is a call to action, a reminder that within each of us lies the strength to choose peace, and in doing so, to change not only our own life, but the lives of those around us. So when the world feels heavy, when anger tempts you, when the noise drowns out your better nature, remember Gandhi. Remember that peace is not passive, it is powerful, that love is not naive, it is brave, and that the smallest act of truth can ripple across continents and generations. You do not need a title to make a difference. You need only a willing heart, a steady hand, and the courage to stand for peace in a world that often forgets how. Living the legacy of timeless wisdom. As we close this journey through the minds of the world's greatest thinkers, it becomes clear that the wisdom they offer is not just a collection of ideas or philosophies to admire from afar. It is a living legacy, a call to action, and a map for how to live a richer, fuller, and more meaningful life. From Socrates' relentless questioning to Gandhi's unwavering commitment to peace, from Confucius' emphasis on harmony to Nietzsche's bold challenges to convention, each thinker invites us to look deeper into ourselves and the world around us. Their teachings transcend time, culture, and circumstance because they speak to something universal, the human condition, and our shared quest for truth, purpose, and connection. At the heart of this wisdom lies a powerful truth. The greatest transformation begins within. Whether it is Socrates urging us to examine our beliefs, or Marcus Aurelius reminding us to master our minds, the journey to a better life starts with self-awareness and self-mastery. To live wisely is to cultivate an inner life rich with reflection, discipline, and compassion. These ancient voices teach us that the answers we seek are often found not by conquering the outside world, but by mastering our inner landscape. This does not mean retreating from challenges or ignoring injustice. Rather, it means approaching life's difficulties with clarity, resilience, and a steady heart. Another thread woven through their teachings is the profound importance of integrity, living in alignment with our deepest values. Gandhi's call to be the change echoes across the centuries, reminding us that true power is rooted in authenticity and moral courage. Nietzsche's emphasis on creating one's own values challenges us to live boldly and without compromise. Confucius' focus on righteousness and benevolence shows us the impact of living in harmony with others. These ideas converge on one message: living a meaningful life demands that we act from conviction, even when it is difficult or unpopular. It calls us to be both principled and adaptable, to stand firm, yet remain open to growth. Connection, too, emerges as a central theme in timeless wisdom. Whether through Aristotle's concept of friendship as a foundation for a flourishing life, or Buddha's teaching on compassion for all beings, these thinkers show us that we are not islands, but part of a vast web of relationships. Our happiness, our sense of purpose, and our ability to endure hardship are deeply tied to how we engage with others. The cultivation of empathy, kindness, and respect is not merely a nicety. It is essential for our individual and collective well-being. In a world often marked by division and isolation, this lesson is more urgent than ever. Importantly, these thinkers also teach us to embrace uncertainty and change as inevitable parts of life. Heraclitus's assertion that you cannot step into the same river twice reminds us that life is a continuous flow of transformation. Stoic philosophy encourages us to accept what we cannot control while focusing on what we can. These ideas encourage flexibility and humility, knowing when to hold on and when to let go, understanding that wisdom often arises from struggle and adaptation. They invite us to find peace not in fixed outcomes, but in the way we respond to life's unpredictable currents. What unites all these teachings is a profound respect for the journey of becoming, the lifelong process of growth, learning, and self-discovery. They do not offer easy answers or shortcuts. Instead, they present a challenge to live deliberately, to question boldly, and to act courageously. They inspire us to move beyond fear, complacency, and superficiality toward a life marked by depth, meaning, and impact. They remind us that the pursuit of wisdom is not a destination, but a path sometimes difficult, often humbling, but ultimately rewarding beyond measure. As you close this book and return to your daily life, carry these lessons with you, not as abstract ideals, but as practical guides. Let Socrates' questions deepen your curiosity. Let Confucius' principles shape your relationships. Let Marcus Aurelius' meditation steady your mind. Let Buddha's compassion soften your heart. Let Nietzsche's courage embolden your spirit. Let Gandhi's peace inspire your actions. These are not relics of the past, but living seeds of transformation that can grow within you. Begin with small steps. A moment of reflection before reacting. A choice to act with kindness instead of judgment. A willingness to question your assumptions. A commitment to integrity, even when it is hard. These daily acts build the foundation for profound change. Remember, timeless wisdom is not about perfection, but progress. It is about learning to navigate the complexities of life with grace and strength, and about becoming the fullest version of yourself. In embracing this wisdom, you join a long line of seekers and thinkers who have walked the path before you. You become part of a timeless conversation that crosses borders and generations, connecting us all through our shared humanity. This is a source of great comfort and inspiration. It means that you are never truly alone in your quest. The greatest thinkers remind us that the search for meaning, peace, and truth is universal, and that within each of us lies the power to shape a better world. May this journey into the minds of the greatest thinkers serve as a spark igniting your passion for learning, your courage to change, and your commitment to live with purpose. The wisdom of the ages awaits you, ready to guide, challenge, and uplift. The question is, will you listen? Will you take these secrets to heart and let them transform your life? The choice is yours. The path is yours to walk. And the reward space, clarity, fulfillment, to yours to claim. Live wisely. Live boldly. Live fully.